I like your color organized bookshelf.
Oh, thank you.
It's really good.
I feel like it just gave it more vibe. It's really hard to find anything.
Yeah, it would be.
But it looks nice.
Yeah, it looks great.
Well, thanks so much for doing the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, James.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself an Australian guitarist?
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. I wasn't born in Australia. I'm a New Zealander and started playing guitar in New Zealand. And, my first musical experiences are all New Zealand. I love split ends and that's always going to be part of it. And then when I moved to Australia with my parents, it was to Queensland, to the Gold Coast. And so I studied music in Brisbane, and I've also spent some time living in Brisbane as a musician, but that's a pretty hard and unusual thing to do up there. Australian. Yeah, I would. Melbourne's quite specific too. So there's a whole bunch of things in the Australian that falls under the Australian category. Australians don't mind claiming New Zealanders as their own, which is fine. So broadly Australian, okay, yes, but specifically Melbourne, specifically from New Zealand, but Australian.
It's, I guess, quite the journey of different places.
Yeah. I when I finished my study in Brisbane, when I finished at the Conservatorium, I definitely had that choice. I definitely didn't want to stay in Queensland. That was not an option. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel I was ready to go overseas, and so it was like Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney, Melbourne. Where do I go? And so I spent time in both places as a young, very green, emerging musician. And Melbourne just had more of a draw musically than Sydney, even though I probably would have preferred to live in Sydney. I grew up on the beach and surfing, and like Sydney had that sort of similar lifestyle feel about it. But musically, Melbourne seemed more like there was more going on and more potential for learning things and in the direction that I wanted to go. So yeah,
sure.
It was definitely a choice to come to Melbourne in the early days. Yeah.
Is that like mid 2000s?
That's very flattering of you, but it was more like mid to late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. My attraction to Sydney was not just the place; it was also Ike Isaacs lived there.
Oh yeah.
And I'd had some lessons from him that was so enriching and so interesting and so rewarding, and that I really wanted to be near him because I felt a connection with him and his music. And I didn't have as much of a connection with Melbourne people until I met Doug DeVries. And then once I'd met Doug and had a lesson with Doug and heard Doug play and sort of hung out with Doug a bit, that was when I was like, yeah, Melbourne's the spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had you sought out Ike Isaacs?
I got when I studied in Brisbane, I did the classical course because I was a classical guitarist back in those days, and that was what I was stronger at. And so part of the course at that time was you did a second study, and I didn't want to do piano or violin or something, so I did jazz guitar. I was attracted to jazz guitar, so it wasn't like I have to do it. I really wanted to do it, and I used to get lessons from the guy that taught at the conservatorium up there. His name's Barry Morton, and Barry was the one who said, "Oh, if you're going to Sydney, you got to meet Ike. You got to get a lesson with Ike. You've got to." And so yeah, I met Ike through Barry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had you been playing any jazz guitar, like, I don't know, for fun?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I, I was in a little band with a double bass player and a singer, and and I could because I played lots of solo guitar, I could accompany solo and duos and trios. You know, like that was where I came into jazz through making my own arrangements and solo, like chord solo arrangements and accompanying and songs and my parents had that Julie London album with Barney Kessel and Ray Brown, and that was really my first sort of introduction to jazz guitar was through accompanying and chords and that sort of sound rather than, you know, anything else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How far through the course was it when you decided to go in the jazz direction?
Yeah, it would have been the last. I was there too many years because in those days they made you do this preparatory year because none of the guitarists were up to standard to do the proper course. and I wasn't. That's fine. I didn't do music at school. I didn't do it. I had a lot of catching up to do, and I still do. And it was probably the last 2 years or something like that. And I knew I wasn't going to be a classical guitarist. Like, you know, I think the idea of even at that stage, it was like, you know, I was, 20 or whatever, and it was like, unless you're doing concerts, recitals in London when you're 20, you're not going to be a classical guitarist. You know, like it was because it's that sort of instrument. You're the soloist. There's no classical guitar orchestra. There's no other career path other than being a dazzling soloist, and I definitely wasn't that. So, I knew that wasn't my future, and honestly, I didn't really connect with Spanish music that much. So, you have to love Spanish music to be a classical guitarist. I really connected with a lot of. It was the 20th century at that time. I connected with a lot of 20th century guitar music so I think my last recital was all 20th century composers and I loved playing new work and that side of classical guitar rather than the sort of romantic Spanish thing. But that's a weird little niche that's never going to be an option. So I. I was really attracted to jazz guitar and Barry Morton was very encouraging. He was a very unusual character. And I started making my own chord solos and arrangements and I'd make really, flash ones and he'd go, make sure you save that one to play to Ike, and so then I went to Sydney and played all this sort of flash stuff that I'd organised and Ike said, what about you try this? And I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. I just learnt this thing, Yeah, and right. So that was a big eye opener for me that Ike was able to just immediately digest everything I did and then give me a bunch of options, and that was really astounding and really, made me think. Right, I need to actually do this properly rather than, rather than always be prepared and rather than always work everything out. I need to be able to improvise this stuff and I need to be able to know what I'm doing. So. That was really, really inspiring and gave me a big kick up the bum.
Wow. Did you have a really solid technique foundation after a few years of classical guitar?
Yeah. Well, my teacher, my classical teacher at the Conservatorium, the English guy, Julian Bazanting, was all about technique and sound. I remember whinging to the other guitar students there, by second and third year going, what? When do we talk about music? When do I talk about phrasing? All he talks about is fingernails and dropping my fingers and having my thumb here. And I, at the time I hated it, but yeah, it was really good. I spent the whole first year I spent trying to have my little finger on my right hand, which you don't use, not wreck the rest of my right hand. I used to tuck it inside my hand, and so he got me to tie it to the music stand and all these weird things to try and fix my technical problems and so those years I spent there were really just a lot of technique. So and technique. Not to be flashy or anything, but just to be able to play lots of guitar and not hurt yourself and have good posture and good wrist position and no tension. No tension was probably the important part of that.
Do you think that like that's something that you would recommend to players to go and do and like spend that time to get such like a great foundation to the start of their
Yeah, I don't know.
instrument?
I mean, I would. I teach mostly tertiary, so I don't. So it's a bit late by the time they come to me. But I don't know. You don't have to, obviously. But guitar's a fairly unusual instrument physically, and I definitely. I'm the same with my teaching. I spend a lot of time on physicality, which potentially annoys a lot of my students. But, hopefully when they get older and they don't have any, and all their friends are getting carpal tunnel and whatever, then they might think back and go, oh, yeah.
Do you have like a practice routine that you've maintained across, the years?
No, I'm a really haphazard practicer. I always have been, and I just dive into something obsessively when it occurs to me.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't have this sort of again, through teaching, students have come to me and said, "Can you write me a practice regime and all this sort of stuff?" And I have to really make it up. Like I have to think about what would be good for that particular person, which is fine, but it's not something I've ever done myself. I have tried various times to go, okay, well, I'm going to do warm-ups, I'm going to do reading for this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But most of the time I'm pretty excited to get onto something, and I just do it.
And how long will that like focus last for?
Yeah, it depends on what it is. Like,
could you give us an example of something recently?
Well, for instance, I remember listening to recordings of myself, just going, wow, I'm not really playing any melodies. I'm playing lots of concepts and stuff, and there's this arpeggio which fits here and this scale. I'm not really making melodies. So I'm going to make this year the year of melody, and I think that was about 2007, and I've been doing that ever since. It's been my year of melody since then. So yeah, wow. That's the and I listen to myself again, and I'm still not entirely happy with my melodic content when I'm improvising.
That's really interesting. How do you like define that as a concept?
Well, exactly. How do you define it as a concept? Yeah, that's the question I've been trying to answer for the last however many years. I think generally guitar players can be a bit because it's easy to play the guitar. It's easy to play a scale on the guitar. It's easy to play a bit of information on the guitar. You put your fingers here and you play them in this order and you go up and down. And I hear a lot of that with improvising, and even from the very best players, and you don't have to breathe. You don't it's a pretty easy instrument to just get around on. So shaping information into melody is I've been obsessed with that. And so what I'll do is I'll take people who I think are melodic improvisers, mostly horn players, don't tell anyone. And, like Sonny Rollins, for instance, is able to make very simple harmonic language into melody, into memorable melody. So I might take a contour, this note goes up as third and skips down, and then it drops down a fourth. And so I'll take those contours because it's quite a good thing on guitar because it's so shapy and you've got your strings and your string groups, and you can easily take a contour and just apply it to an arpeggio, apply it to a chord, apply it to a scale, apply it to whatever, and then just play with that, try and work it out on different strings, work it out in different positions, and in that way you're taking something quite vague, like a contour. You're not taking a lick or a line. You're not going, oh, I can't wait till that F-7 chord and I can plug in my Sonny Rollins line. It's studying, it's analysing what it is that makes that particular thing attractive to you and putting it through your own processes to extrude it out the other end as something that's yours. Well, nothing's mine, but something that sounds natural, yeah.
Do you do that like just by yourself, playing solo, or is this something like you do whilst you're actually like improvising on a gig? Or
yeah, for sure, yeah. We don't do it I don't do it anymore, but we used to do. Bob Stretch used to do Wednesdays at Uptown every week for years and years and years and years, and very often they would, like the bass player when Mark Elton was doing it, or Sam Bates on drums, they'd often spot the things I was working on. and we're working on Diminished this year, are you? And I'd be like, is it that obvious? Yeah. So the opportunity to play a lot has been really is where I work a lot of things out and apply a lot of things, and I don't think I could cope with not playing a lot. I think I immediately try and play the things that I've been or try and implement the ideas that I've been practicing, or I think it's sort of integral to my way through the instrument is playing a lot. But when I practice, I just play by myself. I don't do play-alongs, or I might practice metronome things, just specific metronome things. But generally, I just have a form and a sound in my head and just play to that. And I just record myself all the time. Everything. Normally on gigs, I'll just record them on my phone and listen the next day or on the way home or whatever. And try and remember what it felt like at particular times and how it sounded, and whether when as a listener, whether I feel like it was successful. Because if I leave it too long, then I forget what I was thinking about at the time, and I just listen to it and go, it's fine, and I have no connection with it. Whereas if you listen to it straight away, I have a connection to it as a player and as a listener, and so I can judge whether if something felt good at the time, whether it actually sounded good, or whether if something felt terrible at the time, whether it actually sounded terrible. And it's never as extreme as I think it is, even to me. I know it's not to other people. Like I can go, oh God, I had a terrible time. And they go, oh, it sounded fine. And I go, oh, okay, yeah. But to me, you think you're operating in this wild band of, that was really great and that was really terrible, but it's not really. No, the really great isn't that great, and the terrible's not that terrible. It's just how you are. But to me, it's very extreme.
That's really interesting. The depth of listening back to match intention with output. Yeah,
I think that's important. And getting comfortable with listening to yourself is, if there was one thing I'd impart on young players or whatever, it's just get used to listening to yourself. Because in a realistic way, in an honest, not overly critical, but not overly no rose-coloured glasses, or you've got to face up to it.
Who got you into the recording and listening back process?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I know, I read a lot of interviews with musicians and whatever, and they go, I don't even listen to my records and all that stuff, and that's cool. But I'm not sure specifically who. I used to have again, back in the day, I had a Walkman with a record function, and it was exactly the same thing. I just used to put a tape in, a cassette, and just record a gig, listen to it in the car on the way home. There's even times when I've flung cassettes out the car window because I've been so angry with I just eject it. And I threw it, I've thrown CDs out the window. Yeah, I'm admitting to littering. That's really terrible. But I've just always done it, and just because I feel I've always learnt a lot. I think once I'd left a conservatorium, and once I'd had those really strong formative lessons with Ike and Doug. I mean, Doug didn't want to teach me. Like, he's like, I'm not going to, I had lessons with him, and I'm like, when's our next lesson? He goes, I'm not going to. He goes, what are you doing on Saturday? I've got this gig I don't want to do. You go and do the gig. Like, he just sort of sent me out, and I just used to sort of follow him around, to gigs, and
wow.
he'd let me sit in, or if it was appropriate, he'd let me sit in. And so I realised pretty early on that I had to be my own teacher. When I first started doing gigs with my sort of contemporaries at the time, when I remember the first time I played with Mark Fitzgibbon, and I was just so excited. And, I thought, Mark's this incredible piano player. He's got so much knowledge. And I just bombarded him with questions, and Mark's just like, what? I don't know. Do you want a drink? And I'm like, oh, really? You're not gonna talk about that incredible, it was probably like a wedding gig or something, but I was so excited to be there, so excited to play with Mark. And it's probably Philip Rex on bass, same thing, like I was like, oh, Philip, and then he started talking about his car or something, and I'm like, oh, can we discuss the 251s you played, whatever. But no, there was no real talk. There was nothing like that. So I knew that I had to be. I knew I had a lot of catching up to do, and I had to be my own teacher. And so, to be your own teacher, you have to be able to evaluate your own playing, not through how it feels at the time, but through actually how it sounds, and listen as a listener. So I think I worked that out really early on, and I've just always done it. Yeah.
What was it like having that, like, I suppose, like, more traditional master and apprentice type thing with Doug?
Yeah, I know that doesn't happen anymore, and I feel like I was really lucky in a way, because I didn't actually study jazz. I found myself once I started teaching tertiary, having to condense like hundreds of gigs into like lessons, into valuable lessons to teach people, and very often, I mean, I'm getting better at it, but when I started, I was like, well, I didn't actually learn that. I actually just did it terribly 100 times, and then I got it, which you can't do in a jazz course that requires you to be able to do that thing by the end of the semester.
Yes.
So I was super lucky to have that sort of old-fashioned, and honestly, the standard wasn't as high back then, and so I could go on a gig and be terrible and still get called back. Whereas I think today it would be like, there's so many good young players that if I was as terrible as I was at that age now, I think I wouldn't have the same opportunities. It was. I didn't know any other way, of course. At that time, the tertiary study was sort of discouraged, amongst sort of working musicians as being, you'll come out wrong or whatever, And so, I mean, when I'd finished my classical course, I thought maybe I need to do postgrad in jazz, or maybe I need to study jazz, and like Doug said, oh my God, don't do that. And so, I took it. I took his advice and I just followed him around, and he did all those things where he'd say, oh yeah, you should learn. Learn Trinkle Tinkle by Thelonious Monk. It sits really nicely on the guitar. And of course it doesn't. It's a horrible tune. It's virtually impossible. And I'd be at home, like, working on this thing, going, Doug said it was easy, it must be easy. Okay, I'll keep trying. And so, and there was another gig he let me sit in, but he'd tuned his guitar differently, and he reckoned not on purpose, but he reckoned, the tuning pegs must have bumped when I put the guitar down or something. And I had a bit of that sort of, I don't know what you'd call it these days. I'm not accusing Doug of bullying in any way, but yeah, it was a different experience to the really supportive, nurturing tertiary thing where But then again, I was just encouraged. I was able to make a lot of mistakes and able to, I remember the Fitzgibbon Mark used to run the jam on Monday nights at the Royal Derby, and I used to go every week and listen to the like write down the tunes that everyone played and learn them. And I just it was much more. I just learnt jazz in a much more a much less academic way than it's taught these days. So there were a lot of advantages to that, but then there was a lot of disadvantages too. Like like I hadn't tied a lot of things up in clear concepts for me. I played these sounds because I'd heard other people play them. I didn't really understand them. I just knew they were a sound you could use, and so I used them too and got used to things that way. Whereas if someone had said, oh yeah, the melodic minor scale, it's got a whole bunch of modes and you can use them here and here, I would have gone, well, that's just saved me 3 years of trying to work out what the hell was going on,
Yeah.
But then I think the process of trying to work out what the hell was going on was useful too. So yeah, I feel like my jazz education was pretty haphazard, like there was no clear thread running through it. It was just like I was attracted to these sounds and I went out and tried to find them and tried to find a way of using them myself.
You mentioned the Melbourne Sydney debate at the end of school.
Yeah.
Why sort of base yourself in Melbourne now long term, and not do the maybe more classic thing of trying to go over to Europe or the States and establish yourself there?
I feel like by the time I felt like I had any sort of by the time I felt like I'd be able to keep my head above water musically in a place, especially the States, I've been to New York a few times, and always been really inspired by it. And I remember the first time I went, I just assumed I'd come back and I'd assumed I'd spend some time living there. But I knew I had a long way to go. And by the time I sort of felt like I could hold my own, or whatever the expression is, I was sort of a bit old and I didn't really want to go and stay up till 5 a.m. and stand in a queue of saxophone players to wait to play a medium tempo blues and smalls. I think that's the type of thing you'd probably need to be a bit younger. And same again, by the time I got to Europe, I'd already had kids, and even though the first time I went to Europe was with Kristin Berardi, and we did this tour of Germany and played in Switzerland, I just thought, oh, this place is amazing. What have I been doing, And again, that was something that I thought about. But Melbourne's a pretty rewarding place to live, and you can get a lot of good work done here, and go to those other places and sort of get inspired by the intense. In New York, I get inspired by the intensity. I've got friends that live there, and last time I went, I caught up with Ben Winkleman, the piano player from Melbourne, and he goes, "I'll come around for a play." Great. And so I went around and had a play, and he got out his 5-page chart that he'd just written that morning and goes, "Let's play this." And I'm like, "Oh, I thought we were just going to play a medium tempo B-flat blues, but all right, And it was really challenging, and it challenged you reading. And he goes, "Oh, Linda's coming over later on." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And it was Linda Rowe. She was coming around and she bought a bass, and she goes, "Here's my 7-page chart. That there's just this metric modulation here, which is a bit tricky, but we'll be right." And so here I am, and it was just so I was struggling like mad, but it was so inspiring that that's what they do when they get together and have a play. When I get together and have a play with another guitar player, we muck around. It depends on who it is. Like when I get together and play with Fran, we play with Fran Swin, we play our own music, and she shows me tunes she's written, and it's really great. But it was just to make music on that level in the States was really, really inspiring. You go, okay, so this is. And Ben doesn't really do that many gigs. He plays he was playing in a church on Sunday and doing the occasional thing, and he's such a high level. And I'm thinking, wow, this would be really humbling and inspiring to be in that environment, be around that intensity. So, yeah, that's like I do. That was one of the things I should have done, definitely, is spend some time living in overseas at some stage, but I just haven't. And I've always felt like there's enough work to do here. There's enough inspiration here. Like I still go and hear Stephen Magnuson and go, oh my God, that's incredible. I've got to, I'd love to know more about that. And there's definitely enough here if you keep your ears open to keep you working and keep you practicing and keep you busy and keep you wanting to, musically grow.
Well, you're so busy. Like, I feel like you are playing all the time, and like as yourself, with various versions of the James Sherlock
whatever
outfit.
Yeah.
But also, like, you've got these established relationships where you do seem to have, like, the residencies at Uptown, and you've got a duo project with Ben Hanlon, and you've got so many different things happening. How do you like maintain that?
Yeah. I think of myself as I'm a collaborative type of musician. I don't really go for the artist as hero type. I'm me, and I'm going to get you because this is my vision, and you're in my vision, and you do this, and that's not how I've ever successfully made music. So yeah, I always feel like I'm much better off when I'm collaborating. So that's what I see. I just seek that out.
Sure.
And so with Ben, it's been really interesting. I mean, the first time I played with Ben, it was a trio gig at Uptown. I can't thank Sonny enough for constantly having a spot to play at Uptown, through various iterations. It's been, I don't know what I would have done without it. It's been amazing. But anyway, first gig I did with Hanlon was, I'd actually booked Marty Hollebeck, and Marty rang me and said, oh, look, I've messed up. I've double booked myself. But I'm sending this great Depp along. He's really great. He's just come back from the States. He's a classical player. He's in the MSO, but, he's studied with Christian McBride and John Clayton and all this stuff, and he's a really great jazz player. And, you'll love it. You'll love it. You'll love it. And so, I'm sort of sus. I was with Craig Simon, actually, on drums.
Okay.
And, I don't know if you know Craig, but he's
not well. No,
he's grumpy. He's a grumpy dude.
Yeah, right.
And it was at that stage where he was pretty much giving up the drums. So he was sort of pretty grumpy. And so Hanlon comes along, keen as, oh great, thanks, and he just like, I think we played the first tune we played was the Wayne Shorter tune Juju, and we didn't play it as the old Wayne Shorter, sort of swinging Elvin 3. We played it. I like to play it straight. So I think Wayne, his new band, they still play Juju and they play it straight. So I go, Juju, we'll play it straight. And Ben was just like messing up all over the place. He kept messing up the form and the feel, and because it wasn't strong, it was like we were all second guessing ourselves and we're just having the worst time. And so the first gig I did with Ben was actually really, really horrible, and we always laugh about it now. And then, he just kept being really keen and calling me up and going around for plays, and we just started playing together a lot, and developing that thing, that yeah, sure, jazz musicians can meet. You can shake someone's hand and go, yeah, nice to meet you, and do a gig. Like, that's what we can do. And that's fine, but to get to that next level, you've got to have some sort of relationship. And so yeah, Ben and I just chipped away and played in lots of different things. He just started appearing on lots of gigs that I was doing myself, and we started playing together. And then I can't remember what the actual thought was, or what sort of the light bulb moment was. But we sort of both went, we both had a background in classical music, obviously him way more than me. And we both play jazz. Why don't we try, playing some of those? Why don't, and so, we started seeking out some classical music that had room in it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would really hate what we do, and that's fine. But I feel like there's room in that music for us to play it in exactly the same way as we'd play a Wayne Shorter tune. Wayne's tunes are obviously more designed for improvising than Stravinsky or Schubert or some of the other things we've tackled. But that's part of the joy of it, is just finding where's the room for us to interpret this rather than just play all the right notes as well as we can, which we also try and do. And it was a really fun thing to do. That first project we did, the first recording, it's just imaginatively called Duo, where we played some jazz tunes on there as well. And I think, but yeah, we played Schubert, Massenet, sort of like, for want of a better phrase, we sort of played popular classical music. Chopin, I can't really remember off the top of my head. It was like Chopin, Schubert, Massenet, mixed in with some jazz stuff. And like Ben is the most incredible arco player. Like his bowing is just, I remember first doing gigs with him and he'd just be tuning up and the whole room would just go silent and just go, what is that sound? Like it was, and he'd play a little line and like just everyone in the room, their heads would turn and go, what is that? It's just the most, it's just the most incredible sound. And to be able to play with that and for him to be able to, so as a duo with a bass player, for him to assume that melodic role a lot of the time was really interesting and really great for me because, honestly, the guitar is a fairly below average melodic instrument, it as compared to like a bowed string instrument, because guitar, unless you're plugged into a lot of things or using trickery, you can't swell the note, you can't start soft and get louder, like you just can't, and we can't hold a long note, so to have that ability to play long notes and swells and have that melodic thing come from the bass was really part of why that duo was especially interesting to me. Because I wasn't the melodic instrument. Normally, if you're doing a duo with a bass player, you're playing all the melodies. With the bass player occasionally playing one or two things. So for him to take over a lot of the melodic role was really, that was really good. I really enjoyed that side of things. And being able to swap the melody between each other and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Great collaborative, interplay there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How do you find it? I know you were doing the record with Paul Grabowsky and Emma Donovan.
Yeah.
That adjacent, I suppose, to the pure jazz world. Yeah. So that was I was really happy to get the call for that project. It was, I know it was because Stephen Magson couldn't do it, and I was happy to be doing that role because I don't often play with piano players, and I don't really seek it out because for guitar and piano to work, especially in an ensemble setting, it requires a really deep relationship and a lot of listening from each person, and very often because the guitar is a inferior chordal instrument to the piano, a piano can just easily just knock the guitar out the whole time, just here are my 10 fingers playing notes all the time, and you go, okay, well, I've got my 6 strings that don't always work, but here we go.
So I always go into guitar-piano relationships with a bit of trepidation, but I hadn't played much with Paul beforehand. I do this nice little gig with Rob Burke and Simon Starr occasionally. I do it sort of once a month or something over in Southside.
Yep.
And that's a really nice gig. And then I did a couple with Paul. Like Paul was like, let's do some playing before, because he booked me for the gigs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some playing, and I suspect it was, I felt it was a bit audition-y maybe, but Paul's such a well-rounded, deep, heavy musician with incredible ears and incredible, music, historical music repertoire that he not only knows about but can play. So I really enjoyed playing with him. When we just started playing together straight away, like I wasn't just going to stand there because for a piano-guitar relationship to work, we've both got to be playing. There are piano players I play with where I go, okay, well, I'm just not going to play for most of the night. But I'll play the occasional solo, and that's cool. There's a lot of, and sometimes I'm quite happy with that. Sometimes I quite like the roller coaster of just hopping on board this incredible machine that just goes and just takes care of everything. And I go, oh, I can just get on that and I can ride that. That's nice. I'm into that. But it doesn't really feel like I'm in the band. It feels like I'm just a bit of something on top, and I'll just play the odd solo. But so
the experience of a horn player.
Yeah. Just. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say anything.
I tried.
Yeah, and the problem with that is the guitar is not as good at being a horn player as a horn player is. So the guitar sits in this funny little netherworld, and I like it most of the time. So yeah, with Paul, like we just started playing together, and he's comping and I'm sort of playing things, and like we got this thing, and he knows. He knows everything I'm playing. Like, so I felt like we weren't going to, we probably did tread on each other's toes, and we probably trod on the toes of Simon and Rob and the other people we were playing. But we were getting to know each other, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like he was really listening, and I feel like. And because he's not really a sort of a straight-ahead jazz guy, even though he can be, I feel like he's really open to have those conversations, between instruments that elevate, rhythm section playing above role playing. We are supplying the chords. Like it elevates it from that sort of. Doing your job, which obviously needs to be there, it elevates it into contributing rather than just doing your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about singers?
Yeah. I mean, I've always liked playing with singers. Just because I like that, because that's where that's sort of how I got into jazz, coming from that. Again, like when I first moved to Melbourne, that particular gig that Doug farmed off on me, the first couple of lessons, was a duo with a singer. He just didn't want to do it. He's like, I don't want to do that. Okay. And he knew I could do it, and I wouldn't embarrass him. I wouldn't sound too good, but I wouldn't sound too bad. Like it was sort of that perfect. I was the perfect, the perfect depth, and that actually led to me playing with this particular singer quite a lot, and in those early days when I'd first moved to Melbourne, I really was just, like wandering around, bumping into stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. And I started playing with this particular vocalist. She was American, and I don't think she didn't stay here for that long, but I was all of a sudden working, and when I really shouldn't have been. I didn't really know that much about it. I could just do a duo gig, And so I came, and that's how I learned a lot of my repertoire, and learnt a lot of tunes, and learnt a lot of the language, just from playing all those duo gigs and making heaps of mistakes and going, oh, okay, so you can't put a natural 9 on a 3 chord, and you just work out all this. I worked out a lot of stuff on those duo gigs. So, and plus, I think there's sort of a real completeness in playing a song well. Like instrumental music's all very well, and I like it. But there's sort of this sort of perfection in a song well played, because it's sort of got everything, and it's something that I can be satisfied as a musician, but then people actually like it as well. A lot of people don't even recognize instrumental music, because they don't even go, what's going on? What's going on? There's all these sounds. I don't know. Mm. And whereas when there's a song and there's someone singing, there's a really great, it's a really great way to communicate through music is a song. So I've always liked trying to frame a song as best I can, and I think that especially like duo's hard. That's how I came into jazz, through that sort of guitar and voice duo thing. And then I immediately tried to get rid of that, because I thought I didn't want to do that. I was like, no, I want to play with a band. When I first started playing lots of duos with this vocalist, occasionally we do a band gig, and I'd meet a new musician, and I'd be like, yeah, and I'd get all sort of upset, and because I really wanted to do the band thing and play solos and shred and do it. That's what I wanted to do, but I didn't realize there was so much value in the thing I was already doing. And when I first met Kristin Berardi, when we were both living, I'd moved back to Brisbane for a period when the kids were young, and I met Kristin. The first gig we did was at the Broncos Leagues Club, and they wouldn't turn the TV off while we played.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah. But and it was with OJ Newcomb on bass, actually, Steve Newcomb's brother, who OJ now is doing great. He's playing all sorts of things. And I remember thinking, wow, Kristin, she's really good. And we started doing a lot of playing together, and a lot of playing as duo, but we always just assumed we'd the first thing we'd do was play in a band, like we were like, oh yeah, we'll go to Sydney and we'll get Brett Hurst and Simon Barker, and we'll do a quartet, And eventually we just started realizing that we were actually playing, that we were actually a duo, and like I started to realize in my own self that actually this is something that I do, and I really focused on it. That's when I really started to take seriously playing by myself, accompanying just as me, and it was really great realization that I didn't want to be Joe Pass. I didn't want to be Tuck Andress or Martin Taylor, even though those players are just extraordinary solo guitarists. I knew I didn't want to make the guitar sound like a band, like the way Tuck does. He plays the bass lines and plays the little percussion things, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I really just didn't want to work everything out, not because I'm lazy, I don't think. It's really because I wanted to improvise, and I wanted to be able to improvise in a full way that made sense to someone listening, even though a lot of times it didn't make sense and doesn't make sense to people listening. Guitar is so smoke and mirrors. You've got to leave so much stuff out because you just can't have everything in there. It's a limited instrument, and you've really only got a few fingers, and what are you going to do? You can't keep a bass line constant through a song. Certainly not when you're soloing. You can't, and even when. So I ditched that whole idea of walking bass and all that stuff, which I don't think sounds very good anyway, and. Just tried to develop a way that was my way of solving that problem of guitar and voice duo. And I did it. I made heaps of public mistakes whilst working that stuff out. And this time, and so it was super challenging for me. So I didn't have that problem of, I didn't have that. It was very. When I used to do duo gigs, I'd often get bored and think, but if you're just striving to do it well all the time, you're never going to get bored because there's always something to do and something to think about. And so I'd really admire singers. I admire the ability to have no reference points and just have this music in your head and have it just come out. Like we're so lucky to have these push button instruments that at the beginning of the gig you tune, and so if I put my finger here, a C is going to come out, and that's cool, and it's going to be in tune, and all I have to do is do it. So singers have to be such strong musicians that I find it. There's times when I find it quite sort of mystical how music can just come out like that. So I definitely don't have that problem of thinking that because I'm playing a singer gig that it's going to be somehow restrictive or boring, or the things that you sometimes hear instrumentalists say about playing with singers. I mean, I've got to play with some amazing singers, and I'm always really grateful. But yeah, I don't have that. Difference between playing. I think a lot of musicians, especially jazz musicians, are kind of look at a vocalist gig as being something that's not going to be as interesting, and I think it's rarely the fault of the gig or the singer. It's usually the fault of the musician themselves. In order that if they can't find something interesting, or if they can't find joy in that, then I don't know why you're playing music. Like instrumental music is great because it can be really non-specific, and that's what I really like about it. That it doesn't have words, and you can play a song or a tune or whatever, or one of my songs, and I think, I wrote this about a cat or whatever, and someone in the audience can just picture themselves in a mountain, hiking through and you go, great, awesome. That's the joy of instrumental music, is that it doesn't have to mean anything, and it can mean different things to different people, or it can be just a musical exercise. Like it can be. I like that about instrumental music, but that whole idea of playing a song that has words and has that connection is also really, really special.
Well, we've been playing this game on the podcast.
Okay.
Where I get each guest to ask a question of the unknown next guest.
Of the unknown next guest, okay.
So I've got a question for you.
Right, oh no, what?
From Beth Stevens.
Okay.
From Teeny Tiny Stevies.
Okay.
I just want to hear about their most tragic onstage experience. Because I love those stories.
Oh my God. There's so many. Okay, there's one that really stands out. I was doing this. I got called. This is early days of Melbourne. I got called to do this, perform this film score for a film festival, and it was Howard Shaw, amazing film composer.
Yeah.
And he was going to come out and conduct the score to Crash, the Cronenberg film, which is a wacky film, and it was scored for 9 guitars, a bunch of electric guitars and junk percussion. That was the score.
Wow.
Incredible score, like really amazing, and really sort of quite repetitive and minimalist and quite slippery. And anyway, in those days, it was like, where are we going to find, I can't remember how many guitars it was. I sort of have a vague memory of who did it, and it might have been something like 6 or 8 or something. In those days, it was like, where are we going to find 7 guitar players who can read, And so it was this hodgepodge of. I remember it was me. Sam Mann was on it, and there was a couple of classical guitarists, maybe 3 classical guitarists, and then a couple of people I didn't know, was just this sort of mess of guitar players from wherever they could scrounge guitar players from. Doug didn't do it. Doug was like, I'm not doing that. And the first rehearsal, you know, and on the requirements, it was like, you know, Fender Telecaster and Fender Twin, you know, they required he asked for a certain type of guitar and a certain type of amp and certain type of pedals, and I didn't have any of that stuff. I had in those days, the only electric guitar I had was my old, I can't remember if I had my 125 or my 175, but anyway, it was an old 50s Gibson. And so I'd rock up with that, and you know, Howard he came in and saw, and like the classical guitarist, one of them had borrowed one of their students' sort of pink Charvel, and you know, it was wild, you know. And Howard Shaw walked in expecting to see this bunch of professional, like in LA, like if you said that in LA, yeah, you know, I've got this, yeah, what do you want? What delay settings do you want? You know, like, and there's this sort of wild hodgepodge of, I don't know, weirdos. And he immediately sort of stormed out again, and the producers came up to us and said, okay, guys, we're hiring a bunch of gear for you. Just if you could, and like Howard Shaw refused to hear us on the first day. So we just had a sort of a group rehearsal with the guitars that we had, just to try and find a sound and get it together. And the next day we did the second rehearsal. They'd hired all this stuff. So we walk in and there's all these guitars, you know, these Tellys and these Fender Twins with these particular pedals set on this particular stuff. And so then we did with the rehearsal, it started to sound good. You know, obviously we never got enough rehearsals in order to actually get it happening, you know. And then then the performance was in the Story Hall at RMIT, and it was a big hall, and they played the film behind us, and Howard Shaw conducted. It was for some sort of, I don't know, some sort of anniversary film thing. It was a big deal. There was a lot of people there. And anyway, we're playing Earnestly Away, and then, and because we're all kind of playing the same part and kind of moving in and out, I was playing what I thought was playing, but anyway, there was a sort of silent moment, and there was this noise over the PA, this buzz, this intense buzz, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's terrible. You know, someone doesn't know how to work their pedals, or something's gone wrong. And then, you know, I moved, or I played something, and there's great big noise. There's all this noise, and I was like, oh my God, I think it's me. And I still have no idea about pedals. And at that time I like playing plugging a guitar into an amp was a big deal for me back then. Like I'd just been playing classical guitar, and you know, like a single pickup 50s Gibson, like that was like being really modern and cutting edge for me. So all this, like, and I looked at this array of stuff at my feet, and I was like, something is going wrong there, and I don't know what it is. You know, there was like, there was a volume pedal, there was delay, there was a reverb, there was all these different the very specific pedals all set and stuff, and I'm like, okay, so something in there is not working, and I've got to try and work out what it is. And so I was sort of playing, and like things, and like, you know, once Howard Shaw worked out it was me, he was just like daggers, you know. And I'd worked so hard on this thing, and yeah. Eventually, I bypassed the whole thing. Like I've got to unplug this thing, and of course I did it the wrong way, and great big noise of me unplugging the thing, and so I just plugged straight into the guitar and did the rest of the thing, and you know, I'd learnt the notes and I could play it, and you know, after the gig, he's just like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know. There was this, I don't know. There was maybe a battery, I don't know, a lead. And he goes, you've got to throw that rubbish in the, you know, you got to throw all that gear in the bin. And I'm going, I wasn't even. And so I sort of was trying to protest, but I was going, I've got nothing, you know, like this, I'm the problem. This guy came, this really, high-level musician, flew all the way to Australia, which is such a long way, to do this thing, and I ruined it. You know, there was no way out of that. And yeah, that was, I was really depressed after that. I didn't. What I should have done is learned how to use pedals, but I didn't. I sort of went the other way. I just got, well, I'm never using pedals because that's way too much extra stuff for me to deal with. You know, like it's hard enough dealing with music and the guitar in my fingers, and I can't deal with something down at my feet as well. Like I just can't. I can't deal with that. So I don't know whether that's. I've just never heard that sort of pedals in my music. I've just never heard it. I've never been drawn to it. So, but I don't know. Maybe that early experiences put me off it for a bit.
Oh boy, that's really rough. How did you bounce back from that?
What does it sound like? I bounced back. I'm still traumatized, you know. Yeah, I don't know. Because it was such a left of field experience, because it was something that I didn't do all the time. I think I was able to sort of put it into a box and go, yeah, that wasn't my thing. I didn't do it well. Okay, now to concentrate on my thing or whatever. I think I was able to sort of put it off to the side as being, even though I love doing that stuff. Like I recently did a film score, which was pretty much exactly the same thing. I played a Telecaster. I played through all these effects, and the composer was there, and he'd come in and he'd fiddle with my amp and dial up all the things. But because it was a recording, any sort of malfunction was dealt with easily. And yeah, I actually loved doing it because I love the challenge of playing people's music. I really love doing that. It's sort of a different, especially like being really specific like that. Like he was very specific about, you know, he had these sort of repetitive guitar parts, and being the guitar, there's a whole lot of ways you can play them. So he just liked the fact that I could read them in different positions and do them in different ways. And I go, well, what about if we had an open string here? And he goes, yeah, I don't like the sound of that. Can you play? Or, you know, like, so I love that side of things too, that really technical side of having zero interpretive input. Yeah, I find that fun. Anyway, I got distracted from my Howard Shore story, but yeah, that was probably my worst experience. I maybe if I go away, maybe when I'm driving home, I'll think of a worse one, but that was pretty bad.
Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's a vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
What would you like to ask our next guest?
Yeah. What would I like to ask? Something about the guitar. I'd really like it if the next guest wasn't a guitar player, and then I'd like to, if they're not a guitar player, my question would be, what advice would you give guitar players when playing with you? That would be my question.
Have you had like a non-guitarist give you a piece of advice that's...
Oh, sure. And really good. Like, because it's you know, like, I'm sure it's the same with drums. I'm sure it's the same with any instrument. When you're talking to your own kind, you kind of go into this language and into this world of ultra specific language and thinking that sometimes you just get sometimes someone will tell you something who doesn't play your instrument, and it'll just like go, oh, I've never thought of that, and it'll just be amazing, you know. I remember recording with Mark Spencer, saxophone player, and we were listening, we were listening to the playback, and I was sort of complimenting him on some sort of melodic, you know, he's playing baritone saxophone, it's just sounding incredible. I was like, wow, you know, that's incredible. You know, that phrasing is so great. And Mark said to me, all I think about is how I'm going to end a phrase. I don't really care how I'm going to start it. I don't really care what's in the middle. All I care about is how I'm going to end it. He goes, you should do that. Because obviously I was playing too much and just going, la, 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 which you can do on guitar. And and I still tell that to my students. I still say, yeah, anyone can start a phrase. Just start it. Anyone can play stuff that goes over a G minor 7 chord, but how are you going to end it? And how are you going to know when it's finished? And how are you going to go, yeah, that was a complete musical idea. I'm going to stop it here. And that's a very, and when Mark said that to me, it was like, wow, that's a very un-guitar way of thinking. I'm going to think about that. And I did. I thought about that a lot. I went through a period of, and I still do it, of transcribing phrase endings. So, and not specific notes, but just what rhythms they use, contour again. And I found that the players I was really drawn to have incredible variety of phrase endings. I mean, Wes Montgomery, for one, he just has all these different phrase endings, and you'd think there wouldn't be that many. He never stops on beat 1. Sometimes he does, but it's always at the end of a solo or end of a form. And I'm sure he doesn't have a set of rules about how to end phrases. It's just this natural thing that he does. So yeah, I then pick a phrase ending that I like, rhythmically or as a contour, and then I'll just play for ages, just end every phrase in the same way. And I'll end a phrase using different notes, or it'll be a 2-bar phrase or a 4-bar phrase, or I'll change the direction of the phrase, but I'll always keep the rhythm the same. And the fact that the phrase has ended. That's the most important thing, is that it's finished, that you can stop now, and you should stop. Because guitar's the type of instrument where you go, oh yeah, I've got something to play over that chord. Oh yeah, I'll keep playing. Oh, I'll just add a bit on. Oh, just that, and you hear just people just tacking things on the end of phrases all the time. Oh, yeah, that sounded like a phrase. Oh, but and it just becomes this sort of constant thing. So, that was a really excellent piece of advice I got from a non-guitarist. And there's probably even way less specific things that I've got from people in audiences who've just come up to me and said blah 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 blah, and I've gone, oh yeah, okay, you're probably right. Because I'm always micro thinking about the tiniest dumb little thing.
Well, you're focusing on whatever like niche intention you had for that moment or show, or
niche intention. That's good. That'd be a good name for a song.
There you go. Please take it. Final thing, I suppose, I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. What's it like? Like, we have so many different musicians, and you're like a professional musician.
Yeah.
But it's so, I suppose, like adjacent to people in like the commercial music scene, that are trying to like make a hip hop record that has like, however many.
Yeah, sure.
Thousands of downloads and concert attendees.
Yeah.
But you still receive like critical acclaim and awards and things for your music. But then also you play a small jazz club where, there's not hundreds of people that are coming to watch you play on a Wednesday night. Yeah,
there's hardly ever hundreds of people.
Like how do you like? Yeah.
I mean, when you start out as a musician, you've got no intention of that being your life. I played in some more, some sort of poppier jazz bands in the 90s and stuff, and maybe one of them could have had some success, and I could have gone in that direction. Like in that sort of amorphous, sort of formative period. It just so happens that I've sort of stayed in this thing, and a lot of it's, I guess, thanks to those sort of clubs, Bennett's Lane in the early days, playing consistently and regularly there, and Uptown, and I don't know. I don't think I ever made a conscious choice to go, this is my life, this is what I want. I don't want there to be 3 people at Uptown on a Wednesday night. Like I wish there were more people there, but I think it's a sort of a big picture thing. I think I'm able to scrape out a living over a long period of time, and I think the music I play allows me to age gracefully, which potentially more sort of popular things may not allow you to do. I don't have no judgment for people my age playing pop music. I think it's great. I just think I'm able to put it together over a long period of time and keep growing and keep getting better. And who knows what? I mean, I'd hate to try and work out what people like, you know. And I think the best, what you said, commercial musician. Is that what? Yeah, I think the best songwriters. I don't think they think, oh, people are going to like this. I think they do it because they love it and that's their thing and they're invested in it and they that's their world and they put their best into what they do. And I think the very best of those musicians, that's what they're thinking. I don't think they're thinking this is going to be a smash. I just, when you listen to interviews with people, I think they're very often quite surprised at what parts of their output have become popular. They go, well, I actually really love, I was listening to something about Joni Mitchell doing the same thing, you know, like how much she loves certain music of hers that didn't even see the light of day, you know, and she gets surprised at the almost throwaway things that became her biggest hits, you know. I'm sure a lot of people who write popular music are like that too, that, you know, they pour themselves into certain songs and then get no reaction, and yet they get a reaction from something else, you know. So I don't think anyone, I think the best artists of that sort of genre, that I don't think they're thinking about what people like. I just think that's their world and they put everything into it, and that's what audiences connect to.
All right, well, we finished the podcast with 5 quick answer questions.
All right.
So give me your gut responses.
Oh my God, okay.
What's your favourite venue to play in Melbourne?
In Melbourne? Oh, that's easy. The Salon at the Recital Centre. That is the perfect guitar room. Oh. It is like the guitar room. I'd almost say worldwide. That is, I mean, I haven't played in whatever those other places, but as far as playing guitar in a room with people in it, the Salon at the Recital Centre is next level.
When's your next gig at the Salon?
I don't know. There's nothing in the book. But no, I'm playing with Paul. It'll be over and done with by the podcast time. But I think with Emma Donovan, we're playing at the Recital Centre, but I think it'll be in the big room. I don't think it'll be in the Salon. Okay. Unless it is in the Salon. I hope it is, because I love it there. Even though there's like, I don't know, 20 people or whatever, I love it.
You could be in the Salon and like video linked in to the main stage with them.
Ooh, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would be your dream venue to play?
Apart from the Salon, I don't know. I've heard so many recordings and sort of special big jazz from the Village Vanguard. So probably Village Vanguard would be the one. I've been there quite a few times. It has a sound, like recordings from that room have a sound, and when you're in the room, you go, oh yeah, there's that sound, you know. Wow. And it's got a big pole in the middle, and you can hear the train go past and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, as far as special venues go, and it's, I mean, you know, nothing lasts forever, but it's really hung in there.
Is there like a foundation for the train line or something in the middle of the Village Vanguard?
Yeah, well, it's underground, and there's a subway line dug into the, somewhere around there. So wow. Yeah, you hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What is your coffee order?
Well, it's called a magic for a reason, you know. It's actually perfect, you know, like it's magic. So yeah, that's what I get.
What is your favourite place to get food after a gig in Melbourne?
Oh, I haven't eaten after a gig for years. That's a young person's type thing. And back in when I used to do that, Bennett's Lane used to be a gig that started at 1. It used to be a real late set back in the day. And that was when it was all smoky, and yeah, the late set started at 1. So in those days, it was the only choices you had were the Taxi Diner in West Melbourne for toasted sandwiches, or Cafe Romantica for pizza. That were the only places you could go. These days, I probably don't eat after a gig. So, although There's a place where I live in Lygon Street called Tawuk that's real good.
What kind of food do they make?
It's Lebanese, and it's they do this chicken thing, and it's really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, final question, James.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, I did read that, and I sweated over it. Actually, I don't know, because I worked out. The thing that I thought was, I don't really know, because I think all the dead ends and the mistakes and the stupid things I attempted as a young musician were actually good. Were actually formative. They may have been wrong. They may have held up my progress. They may have stunted my growth. They may have closed off with, they may have been bad, but I think it's all part of becoming who you are. Those dumb things that you wish you didn't do. But potentially, the piece of advice I'd give me specifically is don't be in such a hurry. Sit with things for longer and take them in at a deeper level, because if you don't address them properly, you're going to have to address them later on, and it's going to be harder to do that. So that would be my general piece of advice to me. Well,
thank you so much for sharing so many really interesting insights into like your musical journey and things that you've been thinking about and working on. This has been such a privilege to speak to you about your music. So thanks
for having me. Thank you. Thanks.